What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Midwest Outdoors Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jim O'Neill, and welcome back to another episode. This week is going to be special. First, limited commercials thanks to our returning title sponsor for Season 2, Fish Daddy. That's right. If you guys haven't checked them out yet, you have to. FishDaddyOutdoors.com. Fish Daddy is not only just an ice fishing company, but full of your walleye and bass needs for this spring. We just put up some new biodegradable silicone baits on there, and I got some hanging up there on the wall right now. If you guys haven't seen these, you need to. Our stick bait is unlike any other. It's got UV glow put into it. It's 2 different color. Listen, it's sweet. You got to see it for yourself. So run over there, fishdaddy.outdoors.com, and use MWO10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Alrighty? But guys, the BASSMaster Classic, the granddaddy of them all. After all, it's what got me so into fishing, you know? I remember still very well in 2000, Chicago hosted the BASSMaster Classic. Now, I didn't know much about it. I didn't go to it. I wish I did. I was a wee kid, you know, I was 7 years old. And Woo Daves ended up winning, and it was kind of a lackluster event. You know, the fish didn't show out as much as we thought they would. Nowadays, if they had a tournament on Lake Michigan downtown, there'd be some big bags. There'd be 4 to 6 pounders caught. But 40 pounds for the 3 days back then. And that was the last time the BASSMaster Classic came to the Midwest. Of course, they kind of changed the rules, or dates at least, on when the Classic was. I remember those hot summer days out in Pennsylvania when Iaconelli and Van Dam and Aaron Martins were fighting it out, and they were catching 1 to 2 pound fish. So I guess the spring catches are a little better with some big sizes, but you miss out on those top water blow-ups and some of those bigger baits that guys would use in the summer. So you take some and you lose some there with the change of the Classic in the spring. But ever since it's been in the spring, we've seen some insane numbers. On the Delta, when they one of the returns to the Delta, Kevin Van Dam won and set the weight record back then on the square bill. That's when the KVD 1.5 kind of got its fame, was from that tournament. That's also when Brandon Polinick got his start at that tournament. The fog rose, and there was KVD, Skeet Reese, and Polinick. They were all in the top 5, and they were all within eyesight of each other, but they couldn't see each other because of how bad the fog was, and they were all fishing in a stump field. So bad fog and a stump field doesn't seem like a great combination. But the Classic is just historic, you know. Some of my favorite fishing memories that I wasn't involved in come from the Classic, whether it was Brandon Polinick from the Nation, you know, almost winning a Classic, or Takahiro, catching those last few big bass on that river with the square bill, that I knew it saying, you know, that's infamous in fishing. Or the never give up from Iaconelli when he won his. I mean, there's great events, and people make their names at this. Jordan Lee, sure, he was already a hammer, but became a household name after he won 2 in a row. Hank Cherry won a couple, got his name blown up. Larry Nixon back in the day, Rick Clunn. There's just a bunch of fishermen who made their career, or at least solidified it, in the BASSMaster Classic. And personally, it was my life dream. That was the number one goal, was to not even win. Of course, it'd be amazing to win, but to fish the BASSMaster Classic. And unfortunately, they've made it a lot harder now to qualify for the Classic. So we're going to stick to our job here and just talk about the fishing to you guys and let these young hammers get after it nowadays. But I'll never forget it. 2020, March 9th, I visit the BASSMaster Classic for the first time ever, day 3. And shout out to Anna for spending her birthday doing that. I know she wanted to do something better than that, but thanks, because I cried. You know, I bawled like a little baby because it's like the Super Bowl for us, you know. It is. They call it the Super Bowl of bass fishing. There's no greater moment than winning the Bassmaster Classic and just seeing it, just seeing the confetti fall, hearing someone get choked up over winning. Yeah, you know, as Mercer said it, Hank put the cherry on top of the Classic, and I think we were saying that saying all the way home because of how many times he said it. But it's true. It's there's no better event than the Bassmaster Classic. It is one of my favorite events of the year. It's 3 days of the Super Bowl pretty much, and I know this year I did not get a whole lot of work done. Shh, don't tell the boss, because it was must-see TV. It was almost impossible to remove your face from the screen because, you know, you had Corey Johnson chasing, you had Trey McKinney catching giants and trying to make a last-second comeback. And then you had our winner, our guest today, Easton Fothergill, not catching many fish, but catching monsters, catching giants. And he utilized that to win the Bassmaster Classic. And I can't wait to talk to him. We're about to sit down and hear everything about it. We are going to have limited commercials. This is going to be the only commercial break. We're not going to do any rules, any tips, anything. This week is dedicated to the champ, Easton Fothergill. So we'll be right back after this commercial, and we will sit down with the champ himself, Easton Fothergill.
Midwest Outdoors Magazine helps you enjoy the outdoors, giving you the best information on where to go, what to use, and how to use it. With fishing maps marked by the pros, nature notes, in-depth interviews, and much, much more. Your subscription gets you 10 big issues of the best in fishing, hunting, and the great outdoors. Plus, Midwest Outdoors Digital Edition gives you dozens of extra articles. Sign up now at MWOMag.com. That's MWOMag.com.
All right, everyone. Well, welcome back from our one commercial this show. That's right. We are going limited commercials thanks to Fish Daddy this show because we have the one and only, the 2025 Bassmaster Classic champ, Easton Fothergill. Round of applause. What's up, Easton? How are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good, right? Life's going good. Things are, spring's coming along. We had a great ice fishing season, but I just am not as good as the Classic winner. I mean, I always said that would be like the peak happiness if I could ever do that. That would be the number one thing I want to write off. And I don't know if I'll ever taste that, but the closest thing I can do is ask someone that's maybe not exactly my age, but it's somewhat close. And how does it feel? What's going through the brain? And then we'll decompress.
Yeah, I mean, it still don't feel real. I mean, the trophy's sitting in the living room right now, so every time I leave the house, I walk by it and I'm just like, is that mine? Kind of. I mean, it's unbelievable how everything shaked out. And yeah, I mean, the moment that, you know, the winning weight showed up on the computer there on stage, you know, well, that, I guess, level of shock, you know, that I actually did it I'll never forget it for sure. So I mean, I still can't believe how it all shaked out. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, going into the tournament, I'd say you were one of the names that was getting thrown around just because you had such a hot season last year. But there was definitely some locals I think people were looking at. I know due to momentum, a lot of people, maybe even including myself, thought Trey had a good chance to take this one. And then he came out of the gates firing really hot, real quick. And but like we're not fishing local derbies anymore. It's not one-day tournaments. You have to put together a string of bass. And I guess the Classic's a little different in the sense that it's 3 days instead of 4 for most of your elites events. Um, but yeah, kind of go through each day, where you're at, with your, I guess, your thought process after each day.
Yeah, so I mean, after practice, I caught some giants in practice, but my numbers were just way down. So I guess my thoughts going into the tournament was, if I could just get five a day, I'd be pretty dangerous, I felt like. But I was worried about catching a limit each day because, only one day of practice, I caught a limit. But it was also more of just looking, less fishing. I'd catch one, put a waypoint and I'd get out of there. So I really didn't know what I was on until the tournament. So, and I did my best to practice every corner of the lake because the wind direction was gonna switch every day of the tournament, it looked like. So I tried, to find something out of any wind direction, because the wind was just extreme. I mean, 40 mile an hour plus. So I mean, you can't fish in that, efficiently. So
Practice looked a
my
little
best.
rough. People were getting wet for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, the first day of practice, Gus got into the 70s. I saw on one weather channel, and
Wow.
there's 5, 6 footers out there. I mean, like it was nasty, but yeah, I mean, I was able to find something out of every wind direction I felt like, and yeah, day one of the tournament, the wind was blowing hard out of the southwest, and I had one area that was really protected from the wind, so that's where I went and started. And I got off to a good start, caught a 3 pounder and a 6.5, right away. So obviously that calmed the nerves pretty quickly. And from then on, I was getting just enough bites. It was a bite like every hour, right? I think something like that from then on, just enough to keep me in the area. And the wind was so strong in the big lake that, it kind of, it was hard for me to stay there because that's not my style. I always want to run around and run and gun, but the wind was so strong, it kind of made me stay in there, which kind of was a blessing looking back at it because it allowed me to have some new stuff going in the next days. But yeah, I stayed in that one core area. And I say area, it's a big area that I was fishing. I mean, like it's a major creek.
Pre-carm, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just fishing there all day long. I ended up getting 8 bites, landed six of them and had right at 25 pounds. So I was in third place after day one. Great start, right where I wanted to be. Um, and yeah, going into day two, I knew I was gonna have to make an adjustment because the wind was gonna die down, and it was every day of practice, the fish were doing something a little bit different. So I knew going into the tournament that, yeah, I was gonna have to, just change with them because I noticed in practice the mornings are obviously cooler, and then it would get pretty hot in the afternoon. So what I was noticing was the fish would be a little bit deeper in the morning, and then as the day went on, they'd get shallower and shallower and shallower. So my thoughts were if I could find the population early in the morning, I'd be really dangerous. So and I could just follow them throughout the day. So day two, I went to where I caught him day one. Just was not liking what I was seeing. There was just no activity, no shad, no nothing. I mean, no, it just wasn't happening. So I left there with two fish at about 9:30, went to another one of my areas, and that's when the fireworks happened day two. I mean, I landed on pretty quickly once I moved. And yeah, in like 2.5, 3 hours, I called all the way up to 28 pounds, 28 and a half or something. I mean, super good day. And, at that point, I had done my work and then some. I knew I'd probably move up second or leading going into the final day. So I left that stuff and I just practiced the rest of the day for the last 3 hours of the day. Um, and, doing that, I found two more areas. I was able to upgrade one more time, got one more 5 pounder. That got me to 29 and a half, whatever I weighed, 29.6, I think. Found one other area that had a couple of giants go down on my stuff, but I couldn't get them to bite, and then I had to go in. So I had found two more areas on top of my bag that I had already had. So I felt really, really good going into the final day. Um, Day three, I ended up starting where I caught that last 5 pounder, my last upgrade of the day on day two. And it wasn't happening. I mean, no, nothing. It was just dead. I saw one big one and that's it. And, that's not the way you want to start day three, obviously. But, we started running and gunning. The wind was kind of calm in the morning. It kind of picked up as the day went on. So I went to where I caught him on day two. And still it just wasn't happening. I caught a 4.5 and I lost like a 7,
Mm.
which was, super hard mental hurdle to get over, I guess.
Let's
Um,
let's stop at that moment. You lose a 7 pounder. It's what, almost halfway through the day at this point, maybe 30
yeah,
minutes.
it was like 10:30. It was pretty late in the day.
and you only have a couple bass in the well at this point. You lose a 7 pounder. Everyone keeps talking about your composure and your maturity. What you might have showed composure, but were you spinning out internally or were you good?
No, I was good. I still had 4 hours of fishing left, roughly a little bit more even. So I knew if I just kept running around, because the wind still wasn't too bad. It didn't really kick up until like a little after noon is when it really got bad. So the conditions were still in my favor, where I knew I could run around and hopefully land on them. Because there's a lot of empty water out there, but once you kind of get in a little zone, there's little wads of them all over out there. You just got to find where the little zone that they're using. So I knew if I just worked hard, I'd eventually run into them, or at least I thought I would. Um, but yeah, I went to that second zone on day three, caught the one, lost the big one, and then I got out of there and went to where I caught him day one, and it was just slow and steady, slow and steady. I was seeing plenty of fish. They just weren't acting right. And I was seeing great big ones. And I ended up getting three of them to bite. And I'm just trying to work these fish. I couldn't figure out how to get them to go. And before I know it, it's nearing 2 o'clock. I got four fish for 14 pounds. I mean, it's decision time. And, I ultimately decided I have to leave. But then I was deciding whether I go to where I caught the giant bag on day two or if I go to the new area I found in the afternoon of day two.
Mhm.
And something just told me to go to that new area that I'd found, even though I started there in the morning and didn't see hardly anything, but something was telling me to go there. So that's where we went. And on top of that, it was closer to the ramp, so I'd have more fishing time. The other area was away from the ramp. So that kind of played in my decision too, but that's where we went. And, shortly after that, I caught that 8 pounder at the end of the day. So definitely a super good call on my part. And then, yeah, the waves were really big getting over there. So by the time I went over there, I caught that 8 pounder. And, shortly after the 8 pounder, I had 10 minutes left or so and I had to go in. So, I mean, super cool how that worked out. And yeah, I mean, that 8 pounder is a fish catch I'll never forget.
You won't forget it. I think your family won't forget it. Your friends won't forget it. Even some of us lay people won't forget it. I can tell you that, having you and Trey and, some of the other Midwest guys that I'm more invested in, I care to see you guys do better. It's where I grew up, I feel like there's a little more to relate to it, but I don't know if anyone has explained the sequence to you yet, but we're all watching on live, okay? And you are the last person they show. And they say, all right, that's it for coverage for the day. And they're panning out, and you're hearing Tommy talk. And then, literally, as they're changing the screen to go to the paid advertising, you hear Mercer, I believe, go, hold on, wait a minute. And I've never seen it. Literally, as many years as many tournaments as I've always watched, they don't interrupt a commercial. And I could tell right away someone caught a big fish without even knowing any information. That's the only reason they would do that. But I was like, oh, it would be so great to not know who caught this, because whoever caught it might have just won the tournament. And then before your name was even out of the mouth, I could see the red. I could see the red and black, and the last cut before they went into break, and I think anyone that could really know live scoping, I could see your eyes lock on. Like, you saw that big fish looking at that bait. And
Hmm.
sure enough, 60 seconds later, you're fighting it. And it's what, your second or third in 2 years, big fish as time's coming down, caught on camera. I mean, nowadays, I guess everything's caught on camera, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely last year or so, I've had a lot of last minute clutch catches for sure. I mean, it just goes to show you got to work right until the last minute. I mean, it's crazy how many tournaments are won in that last half hour of the day for sure.
love him or hate him, the great Mike Iaconelli, the never ever give up. I mean,
Hmm.
it's no more true than for fishing, where any cast could change anything.
Oh yeah, it's so true. I mean, yeah. And I mean, yeah, all it takes is one cast to completely change a tournament. So, and yeah, done it many times.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about those fish. So what were they in pre-spawn? What were those fish you were catching?
Yeah, every fish I caught was pre-spawn staging to go into these pockets and spawn. I was doing my best to intercept them as they came out of the main lake coming into these creeks. I was just fishing classic pre-spawn stuff, channel swings, secondary points, things of that nature. Anything that had a hard bottom is what I was keying in on. And there's obviously Lake Ray Roberts, especially in that east arm where I was at, is just a forest of trees. But out of all those trees, it was like a small percentage of them that I was actually interested in. I'd say like 10% of the trees. You could go into a pocket and there's only 10, 15 trees in that whole pocket that I want to fish just because they had to be set up right on those structures for them to hold fish. So, I mean, yeah, it was interesting. Just, I mean, one could just go in there and fish trees and just waste so much time, but I kind of got extra dialed in, I guess. The trees that are on the right structure are the ones that held fish at least consistently. So that was one thing I felt like I set myself apart a little bit even more was knowing exactly the depth range and what structure and that sort of thing that the fish were sitting on.
And were these fish, I'm guessing suspended, like kind of under branches, or were they hanging out in the shadows, or what were they kind of doing?
So day one, it was cloudy and windy, and these fish were actually glued to bottom. They were super hard to see. Some of the fish I caught, I didn't even see on live scope. I was just throwing at the structure. But then day two was I actually got to pick off individual fish. It was sunny and glass calm there in the afternoon, and they actually got so high in the water column, it was like they're sitting under floating docks almost. They were sunning on the surface. And I mean, they were high enough to where I'm pretty dang sure I could have caught them on a frog, but I took it out after day one of the tournament. Like, I'm pretty sure they could have smashed a frog, but
Wow.
we made the Nico work. We downsized the weight, like I've talked about, to a 1/32 ounce. I mean, basically weightless, but that's how we caught them on day two. And then day three, it was a mixture of both. Started out calm, so they were kind of all over in the water column. And then as it got windy, they kind of sunk lower and lower and lower as the day went on. So, but yeah, I mean, it was all about just kind of tweaking my tackle a little bit based on where they were in the water column.
Yeah. And I got a few toys around here. Now, I'm not sure if this is quite exactly what we're using, but I got my custom light combo here, right? So for that rig, you probably want spinning for the most part, correct?
Yep, yep.
And what were you running? What were you running for this stuff?
It was a 8 pound braid, striking braid to
Okay.
a 17 pound fluorocarbon leader, Seagar.
Gotcha. And did you feel like that 17 was necessary because you were getting hung up in the trees, or is that normally what you fish that rig with, or why? So that seems a little heavy to me.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, that's definitely beefier than I normally go. I mean, to be honest, I think that's the heaviest leader I've ever used just because, I mean, I was around a lot of big fish. I mean, a lot more than I could even get to bite. But yeah, I was being extra careful to make sure I'm not over any branches. But, you hook an 8 pounder in them trees, there's no telling where they'll take you. So I just wanted to be prepared in case, because you have that 17 pound, that's quite a bit of abrasion resistance there. I mean, it can rub against those trees pretty good and not break. So that's why I did that. And another reason was I kind of was able to lean on them a little bit harder and make sure, kind of steer them around a little bit with that heavier line.
Sure. And then as for your actual bait, I wasn't able to, I didn't have any of your exact worm that I saw, but I was trying to get the closest to it, right? So,
Hmm.
because I'm sure some people don't even understand this technique, especially some of our older crowd that's maybe not used to what they're doing. So, pretty much, right? You just had a finesse worm,
Hmm. Yep.
and then you're sticking a weight, what, in its head, its tail, where you,
And its head, the thicker side of the worm. Yep. So that side.
so a little nail weight here.
Yep.
So, it's going to fall down and you just hook it, right?
Yeah, you just in the middle of the worm there. I usually go a little bit closer to the weight, not necessarily right in the middle. I go closer to the weight just
Gotcha.
because I think it gives the tail a little bit more action then.
Reaction.
But yeah, I mean, I was doing a combination of shaking it on top of their heads, and then also sometimes I'd let it fall past them, and they'd follow it all the way to the bottom, and then I'd give it just one hard pop, and that would usually get them to ignite on it. So
What hook do you fish with this normally?
I've been using the Ryugi Talisman hook. Usually I just throw the normal model Talisman, but this week I was throwing the Heavy Guard model. It's got two metal prongs.
Gotcha.
That made it so. I mean, if I made a bad cast or something in the middle of that tree, it would hardly ever get hung up, which obviously helps so much with the efficiency part of it. I mean, you'd be retying so much if you just threw an open hook around that stuff. It's gnarly, so
Yeah.
that was definitely a big deal for me.
Now, the Nico rig has come up quite a bit with forward facing, but it's definitely been dominated by the minnow. You know,
Mhm.
was there a reason, or maybe you did try and practice to throw the minnow on them and they didn't want it, or was there a reason why it seemed like the why you went with the worm, or was it just working better? Or?
I mean, it's throwing it around the trees is just so much more efficient than a minnow, and I think that it was just I don't think they were keyed in too much on like your gizzards and your thread fins and that all that. I think for whatever reason they just I mean I did see a couple bass in open water, but I mean they would freak out over that Nico. I mean it was the deal. I mean even over a minnow. So
Yeah.
it was just a combination of that's just what I had confidence in. It was just the most efficient thing to throw at them where they were sitting.
Now, going into the tournament, had you, Bass had just been there a couple of years ago. Hank Cherry won, I'm pretty sure, on a jerkbait. Was any of that in your head going into practice? Did you kind of start like that, or did you try to go with fresh mind? Had you been there before?
So I went there for pre-practice early December. I hardly even fished hardly at all. Mostly I knew there was a bunch of timber, so I wanted to find like lanes into all these places, just so I didn't have to do that when we came back for the official practice. So that's what I did for a couple days, and then the last day I was here, I think I practiced 4 days. The last day I actually got to fish a little bit. I did catch some, nothing too crazy, but like I said, that's not what I was worried about. I just wanted to do navigation things. So.
Conditions changed so much between then and then.
Right, exactly. I mean, you don't want any preconceived notions. You don't want to be like, I caught them out here and they're not here anymore, like that sort of thing. So, but yeah, that was definitely super beneficial. I could just get right to it when we came back for official practice. But yeah, I mean, when Hank Cherry won, it was that was COVID year, I believe. It was in June and it was flooded. So I knew whatever they were doing in the tournament probably would hardly play at all when we were here. So, I mean, to be honest, I hardly even paid attention to that tournament. Um, it was more of just map studies, Google Earth study, and that sort of thing, just trying to figure out because I knew even when I was here for pre-practice, I pretty much knew it'd be a pre-spawn tournament. I thought there'd be more spawning, but even then, I thought it'd still be one pre-spawn. They just weigh a little bit more, so that was kind of my mindset going into it the whole way, just trying to intercept them coming out of the main lake.
What, you know, after the tournament's over, um, you're sitting at the scale. You mentioned when the weight popped up, you just couldn't believe it. What is that exactly like? Because I've always wondered that. Like, they tell you what you need to beat them, and then you're just waiting for that number to generate. And I'm guessing you see it a half second before they can even announce it. So,
Mhm. I mean, it's just shock. I mean, it just seems, for me at least, growing up and watching it for so long, it just seems so unattainable. And even when for me, when I was competing in it, it just seems so far out of reach, even though I have a 1 in 56 chance. I mean, just looking at all the guys around me, I mean, every single person that's there deserves to win. So it just seems so far out of reach, like I said, but every day of the tournament, it got more and more real for me. And then especially the final day, I was leading by like 8 something pounds. So obviously I'm like, holy cow, like I just got to catch five and I got a shot. And then all of a sudden I'm struggling throughout the day and it just felt more and more out of reach even on the final day. So I mean it was just like I said, it was just shock because it did feel out of reach for so long and all of a sudden I did it. Like it just hit me like holy cow, like it's me. I did it. Like I mean it was crazy. And then once I actually got the trophy and hoisted it and stuff, it was more of just flashbacks and memories of like the open wins and the college bracket win and just everything it took to make it here in the first place and then to win. It was just all those memories flying through my head. So that was a super cool moment.
yeah, I know you're pretty calm and cool and collected, but I was waiting for the tears to start going pretty hard at that moment. You've been through a lot, obviously. If anyone's watched our past show, we talked about it. I mean, from college fishing to having a mass on your brain to having emergency surgery to winning the classic qualifier to fishing the opens, winning two opens, EQ Angler of the Year. I mean, Easton, it's a lot. It's a lot in 2 years.
It is a lot. And I got kind of locked up a couple times on stage, but we somehow held the tears back. I thought they were going to come too, but we held it back. But I did get a little bit speechless a couple times, but yeah, it was definitely just a flood of emotions running through my head for sure.
Was there any, when I grew up, I remember watching my first classic ever. It was on the Louisiana Delta. Kevin wins his first classic ever. And I saw some of the posts you shared and stuff, and I think anyone from pretty much the age like 20 to 35, if you love bass fishing, Kevin Van Dam was one of your idols, your inspirations, your mentor. Like he was a fixture of what was going on in the sport. You couldn't get away from him, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so to have that moment, I guess this is a two-part question. One, some of what made his career so awesome is because Aaron Martins and Skeet Reese was always and Ike and Ellie were always chasing him. You know, they were awesome anglers, but he was just superior. I think you have an incredible age class kind of with you. You know, you have some incredible fishermen. Um, was there anything said with you and Trey up at the stage? Did he say anything or did you say anything that you kind of remember to each other?
It wasn't anything special, I guess. It was just, just respect of one another, like good job, man. Like he said good job to me, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't anything too much beyond that, I guess.
No, I was just wondering, because I think there's whether it's you, him, or Kyle, or Logan, or whoever, I mean, there's a lot of studs right now, and you guys are all
Hmm.
very close to age, and I think that's makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Secondly, obviously, I saw the pictures were with Kevin. Obviously, some of those things are going to be personal, but what was one thing he said to you that kind of stood out?
I mean, it was at the Night of Champions where we took that picture and or the Champions Toast, whatever they call it. And I was taking pictures with I can't remember who I was taking a picture with, and all of a sudden his head just appears over my shoulder and he's like right next to me. I turn around and he's like he just introduced himself and he's like, I never met, but I'm so proud of you and that sort of thing. And just I mean, he just walked me through like how I beat his record. I didn't even know it was his record. I knew I beat the record. I didn't even know it was his at the time, but he just walked me through how proud he was of me and just I mean, just basically gave me a big pep talk there. It was just, I mean, he had never even met me before, and we all know how busy he is. So for him to take that much time out of the day to come congratulate me and tell me nice work, I mean, it meant so much to me, and it really shows how good of a person he is. So yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest moments of my career, and it always will be. I mean, someone like him to do that is such a cool thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll see if he's as nice if he beat his four-time record. You got a few years to go after that one. So, I guess before we move on from the classic, what, because like I said, I grew up with some of the same thoughts and dreams and stuff. What is something that you remember and when do you remember? Like, what was one of your first memories of whether it was watching a classic or the Elite Series? Like, when did you think this is what you really wanted to do?
So I guess I really got hard into it in high school. I guess even before that, my dad and he really got me into it at a young age, and we did it all over the state. Then we started the high school team. I got really into it, the competitive side of things, kind of traveling around the state. And then I ultimately made the decision to go south to Montevallo to do the whole college deal, and that was just to I knew if I ever wanted to make a run at the professional stuff that I would have to, learn how to fish in the South. So that was the biggest decision why I made that.
That was a good
Oh.
choice.
Yeah, so decided to go all the way across the country to go to school. And then once I got to Montevallo and really started traveling actual the country, more just statewide, actually, the 10, 12, even more hour trips, to go fish a tournament, that's when I really fell in love with the whole being on the road, the life on the road style. And that's when I really decided, like, hey, I really like this. I got to do whatever it takes to get there, kind of thing. So that's when I decided I'm putting 100% into college fishing. I'm going to learn everything I can these 4 years while I'm on the school's dollar. And yeah, I mean, just I was just an absolute sponge all those 4 years, just taking in anything I could, any knowledge I could from any kids, all the places we went, just learning as much as I possibly could in 4 years. And that's the sole reason why I'm at where I'm at today and why I'm having so much success.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't think it can be talked about enough how every sport pretty much for decades and decades have had feeder programs. You know, you've had Little League, you've had the YMCA basketball, you've had all these Pop Warner football, you know, you've had everything, but for fishing, it was very lacking. How my when I was in high school, Illinois became the first state to sanction it. I don't know. We should probably be one of the last states to host bass fishing events. But I got to see firsthand the movement start, you know. And I remember some of those early days. I remember the first year collegiate fishing was ever a thing. I think Central Florida, the Gators won. They won back to back. You know, one the first one, one won the second one, and I just couldn't believe that. I was like, fishing in college, you know, and then it's
Mhm.
high school, and now I just had middle schoolers who's on just came to my high school team who just represented America in Africa as an eighth grader. I mean, bass fishing, man, it's arrived.
Yeah,
Yet, and I'm not even going to acknowledge all the stuff that's been going on in the last 2 weeks because it's nonsense. It's nonsense, you know.
oh yeah,
I mean, listen, I'm sure there was backlash when the distance finder in golf came out, right? I mean, we can talk about this forever, and I'm just going to spend 30 seconds on it. Life keeps evolving, technology keeps
exactly,
evolving, and
exactly,
if you're a surgeon and you don't keep up with the technology, the robots that are now doing surgery on our hearts, yeah, we're saving a lot more people. We're just getting better at the jobs.
exactly.
That's
I mean,
simple.
it's the way fishing's always been. It's always, I work extremely hard at staying ahead of the curve, not just with technology, but with my techniques. I always want to stay ahead of the curve on line, baits, everything. I'm extremely, driven to stay ahead of the curve on everything fishing, and I think that's the way you have to be, and that's how you have to be, and if you want to, compete at the highest level. I mean, you can't, the you learn on one trick and it doesn't work forever. You got to keep evolving with the sport, just like you said. So, yeah, I mean, it's just all the hate is definitely it's a minority, and I know that. I mean, there's not many people. There's definitely less people that jump on social media and talk good about something than what I mean. I mean, it's definitely a minority, and I mean, the ones who know, I guess. So,
Listen, the negative is a little louder, but for every one comment that's negative about it, I bet 100 people shared a picture or a video
right,
or a conference from you from that event. I mean,
exactly.
Easton, it was nothing short than amazing. It's a storybook. It's really a storybook story. That's I don't think anywhere near over yet. Yet
Hmm.
you could do a start to finish on a story already in 2 years. Um, so you should be nothing but super proud of yourself. And isn't it crazy? It's like you could turn that live scope on and no fish come in your boat. It's nuts. It's nuts.
It is crazy. It is crazy, but yeah, I mean, crazy world we live in.
Yeah, that's it. You know, there's male Karens, you know, it is what you're gonna do, you know. Keyboard warriors. But
Yeah.
anyway, two more things before we let you go. So obviously, like I said, the story's far from over. Your season's far from over. You know, I've always thought it's interesting how the classic kind of breaks up the schedule a little bit. I don't know. I think I'm still in the favor of the old summer classic, but you definitely get some big girls that you catch that pre-spawn, you know, doing it now.
Mhm.
But what are you looking forward to most this season coming up?
I mean, it definitely feels good to be qualified for the classic already going into next year. I mean, that's a huge, weight off my shoulders, especially at the start I had.
Yep,
But yeah, I guess, something pretty special would have to happen for me to make an AOI run with the start I had. So I guess for me, it's just hunting for a blue trophy the rest of the year. And I guess I'll take some chances I normally wouldn't take, trying to stay in the cup for the classic. Like I said, I don't have to worry about that now. So I guess, yeah, we'll shoot for the stars at a couple events and hopefully make a run at a blue trophy.
I absolutely would. Why not, right?
Hmm.
Um, as for coming up north, you know, I look forward to running into you guys probably over at St. Clair. You got two tournaments up north. Do you have much experience on either one of them? And which one of the two are you more looking forward to here in the Midwest?
Hmm. Man, and they're both so different, but I love them both equally. I mean, St. Clair obviously it's going to be a forward facing deal, smallmouth. We all know that. Obviously I'm extremely comfortable with that. And then lacrosse is just that's a place where I can let myself be free like I want to be. I can go do, I can go throw a frog on a place, then I can go, I can crank a wing dam, and then I can just, I can just do so much, which is my style of fishing. So, and I tied for the last check last year at St. Clair in the Open, lost the tiebreaker, and then lacrosse, we had a really good finish. We got 11th or 12th, I think. So, I mean, definitely feel really good about both of them. So, I mean, hopefully both of them will have a good event and hopefully make a run at one, if not both, for the trophy. But yeah, those are definitely those two and Hartwell are the top of my list. Hartwell is my favorite lake ever. So
Nice.
between those three, hopefully we'll have some fun at them.
Absolutely. I know Strike King just came out with a new bait that you've been talking about the last couple weeks. I've yet to catch a fish on a die. Maybe if I get up with enough time, maybe St. Clair would be a good time to maybe
Hmm.
show me how one does work a die in the water.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously one that I've had some success on, and I've obviously helped striking with that bait. We
Hmm.
got it really dialed in. I mean, it's really good, and it's at a really good price point with that. So I'm super excited about that bait, and yeah, I mean, I'm excited to show really how versatile it actually is. It goes way far above and beyond the smallmouth thing that it's known for at this point. So
Hmm.
I'm excited to use it all over the country and really show what it can do.
Absolutely. And the last thing, because you've been doing enough of these, let's relax, decompress, take a deep breath, put a smile on your face. A game I started playing with some of my elites guys last year is bass, pass or bass, right? So whether you're going to pass the lake or you're going to bass fish it. Here's the problem. I'm going through all the lakes I know in Minnesota, and like I would fish every single one of these big
Oh
boys.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, because like they all have great fisheries, which is again, no dish on my Illinois here, but it's a little rough sometimes.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm going to give you my five biggest lakes that I've been on that I like. All right. And I want you they're all great fisheries. We're not putting any of them down. Um, Smallmouth bass, if you wanted to catch, whether, kind of use a formula, a big one and numbers. Okay.
All
So
right.
from 1 through 5, what you would fish. So we got Leech Lake, Mille Lacs, Winnie, Lake of the Woods, and Vermilion. Have you fished all those?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you talking just smallmouth or bass in general?
All right. We won't discriminate against the greenheads. We can do both.
All right. Well, that I was gonna say for numbers, Leech was at the bottom of the list, but if you put largemouth in the equation, it rises way up. So if we're talking just bass, Mille Lacs is number one for all those for numbers and size. I mean, it's unreal.
Yep.
Um, Leech is second for size. We're talking smallmouth, but it's at the bottom for numbers. It's very tough fishery, but great big ones.
It is tough to
Um,
find smallies out there. I've fished it a few times. The largemouth can be incredible shallow.
it's unbelievable largemouth lake. Probably one of the best in the country, honestly. For it to go get a bite, it's insane.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's really slept on.
oh, absolutely. Vermilion, insane numbers lake. There's big ones in there too, but it's a good big ones lake, but when you compare it to a Leech and a Mille Lacs, it's a little bit further down the list. So we'll put that number three. Lake of the Woods is a really good smallmouth and largemouth lake, both. But you compare it to a Leech and a Mille Lacs, the size, I mean, for me, that's more of a Gussie question. I haven't spent as much time up there as he has, but to me, I think the size is a little bit down compared to them, but great numbers when you get in the right zones out there. Winnie had, to my knowledge, there's no smallmouth in Winnie, but it's a really good largemouth lake.
Mhm.
There's not many zones out there that has them, but once you get around them, it's really good numbers and great big ones. So, man, for big, we'll talk big ones. I'll rank Mille Lacs, Leech, Winnie, Lake of the Woods, Vermilion.
Yep.
For numbers, it's Mille Lacs, Vermilion, Lake of the Woods, Winnie, Leech.
There you have it.
Yep.
Well, you didn't even play favoritism on Leech, and it gave you such a good memory last year.
It's a tough lake, man, but there's giants out there.
the first year I had ever seen a mag draft. Okay. It happened sometime in the fall. I went to Leech for the first time ever. And at this point, literally maybe 1,000 people had bought a mag draft in the country. I mean, I've never in my life on a non-private body of water or just like an amazing day where you really have things figured out, you know? I mean, I bought no problem 20 pounds of largemouth in a day in one cove without knowing at all what I was doing.
It's awesome. It's an insane fishery, man.
Well, listen, Easton Fothergill, everyone, your 2025 Bassmaster Classic champ. I can't wait to see what you do. Where does everyone follow your stuff if they want to see it?
Yeah, so I'm mostly active on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram's Easton Fothergill Fish. Facebook's Easton Fothergill Fishing. So pretty simple. That's where I do my best to keep everyone updated on what I'm up to. So those two platforms is where I'm at.
Boom. Follow along all year long, everyone. The Midwest kid, Easton Fothergill. Again, I am super proud, and we're all happy in the Midwest here. You took it home, and keep doing your thing, buddy.
Thanks for having me, man.
There you have it, guys. The words from the champ himself. And it really was a memorable Bassmaster Classic. Maybe more so than most because I knew some of the guys in it and had a little more invested stake in it. But truly couldn't be more happy and more proud of Easton for your win, bud. Congrats again. I can't say it enough. And thanks for joining the show. We love to have you as part of the Midwest Outdoors family, as you being from Minnesota, as we mentioned before. Like I said, guys, we're not going to keep you here all week this time. That is the end of our show. As always, I want to thank our sponsor, Fish Daddy. Like I've said, check it out, fishdaddy.outdoors.com. Code MWO10 for 10% off at checkout. If you guys haven't, make sure to check out Midwest Outdoors, our website, midwestoutdoors.com. We have a contest going on right now for a $500 Tackle Direct gift card. And hey, ice fishing is over. Open water is here. Granted, I know some of you guys up in North Dakota and Minnesota are still ice fishing, but as for the podcast, we'll be covering open water from here on out. In fact, our next show will be out in 2 weeks, and we will be talking about the muskellunge. That's right, the king of the Esox family. I'm going to talk about the muskie and why people chase it. I'm going to be talking about my favorite muskie story, and we're going to be talking to some other muskie guru. So you'll want to make sure to check that out. Guys, if you haven't, make sure to like and subscribe the show, turn notifications on so you know when we drop a new one. Remember, you can check out all Midwest Outdoors TV segments on YouTube on our page here. And guys, that is a wrap on the Bassmaster Classic. I'm gonna have to get Easton to sign my classic hat, but it was an absolute great time this week. Come back for more. Make sure to check us out. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you name it, we're there. We'll see you guys soon. Tight lines.